10. The killing of Sarah Everard. 33-year-old Sarah Everard was murdered by a Met police officer. His name is Wayne Couzens. He kidnapped her as she was walking home from her friend's house in the city of London. The judge who oversaw the proceedings called the case devastating, tragic, and wholly brutal. The family of Sarah said that the only relief they have now is knowing that the murdering cop will die at some point in jail. Wayne has been described as a coward. His crimes are a gross betrayal of everything that the police are supposed to stand for, and even his friends and family called him grotesque. Here are the disturbing details of what happened. It was March 3, 2021. Sarah Everard was approached by Metropolitan Police Officer Wayne Couzens and arrested for allegedly breaching COVID-19 regulations. It was a bogus arrest, and once Wayne had her in his squad car, that was the end of it. He drove her to the middle of nowhere, violated her body, and then strangled her to death. He then disposed of Sarah's corpse in a nearby pond. In today's world, cops don't just get away with this sort of thing. Wayne was arrested less than a week later, and he has yet to be let out of prison. He's been given an entire life sentence for the murder, meaning he's not allowed out of prison until he's dead. 9. Planting drugs. In Florida, a police officer has been sentenced to 12 years in prison for planting drugs. And not just once, but on 3 separate occasions. His name is Zachary Wester, 28 years old. In May of 2021, he was brought up on 19 charges surrounding 3 different incidents in Jackson County. These incidents took place between 2016 and 2018. While the investigation was ongoing, Wester had already been fired. In the end, he was convicted for planting drugs on Teresa Odom, Joshua Emanuel, and Stephen Van. He was even busted in his own body cam footage. The footage showed him carrying a small baggie to the victims' vehicles and then stashing it inside so that he could make an arrest. Wow, not only is that insane, illegal, and wrong, it's also lazy. This is obviously horrendous, and prosecutors knew just how terrible his actions were. It's why they asked for 15 years. They didn't only charge him with being a bad cop, he also got charged on counts of racketeering, fabricating evidence, possession of a controlled substance, false imprisonment, and official misconduct. 8. The serial killing cop. Just before he died, a former French police officer admitted to being a brutal serial killer who plagued the streets of Paris throughout the 1980s and 1990s. His name is Francois Verrove, and he died by an overdose on drugs just after the police called him in to submit a DNA sample. He knew the jig was up at this point and figured he would just end it himself before his name got dragged through the mud. In a note that he left before taking the drugs, he admitted that he was the famous serial killer known locally as Le Grêlé, pockmarked killer in English. The police had been hunting him for 35 years with no success. From 1986 to 1997, he murdered girls and women throughout the Paris area, at least 4. One of his victims was only 11, while his oldest was a 38-year-old man. Sadly for the families of the victims, they'll never know the true extent of his crimes because he died before the police could ever question him. Officers are 100% sure it was him, since they took DNA from his corpse and matched it to several different crime scenes. What's really crazy is at the time of the murders, Francois Verrove was a police officer. He was actually part of an elite unit of cops responsible for protecting the presidential palace. He also belonged to a unit that specialized in pedophilia investigations. This seems pretty fitting considering the age of some of his victims, who he not only murdered, but also violated. 7. Running naked. A former police officer from Florida, what is it with Florida, has been sent to prison for forcing teenagers to take off their clothes and run naked. In this totally bizarre case, Michael Martinez got brought up on 2 counts of extortion and unlawful compensation. What he did goes back to 2016, when he had an altercation with a young couple. Remy Riley and her boyfriend, Kyle Schulte. They were only 18 years old when Michael pulled Kyle over for a routine traffic stop in the Florida Everglades. When Michael discovered alcohol and marijuana in the car, he offered the couple a very strange choice. They could either be arrested or follow him down a dark and secluded road. Instead of getting arrested, the teenagers agreed to do what the officer told them. He took them down a dirt road, made them take off their clothes, and then run naked for no apparent reason. He didn't even make them run anywhere. He just mentally tortured them, having them run in circles in front of him completely naked. And then, when the teenagers thought the worst of it was over, Michael solicited a very inappropriate favor from the 18-year-old Remy Riley. He forced her boyfriend to watch the entire thing. It took 3 years for them to get their justice, but Michael Martinez has finally been sentenced to 10 years in state prison. Plus, he'll never be a cop again. 6. RoboCop. RoboCop isn't quite ready for the world just yet. In Huntington Park, California, a woman tried desperately to get help from a police robot patrolling the area. But when she tried to report a fight that had just broken out in a parking lot near downtown Los Angeles, she was told to go away. The Good Samaritan was Kogo Guevara, who ran to the police robot and pushed its emergency alert button. She kept pushing the button trying to report the crime, and the robot just kept telling her to go away. She was eventually forced to pull out her phone and dial 911 herself. The police finally arrived after about 15 minutes, and by then the fight was over and there was a woman on the ground bleeding from a deep wound. Even as the police showed up and the injured woman was taken away in the ambulance, the robot didn't seem to care at all. It was just cruising around, humming a tune better suited to an intergalactic sitcom. So what's the deal with this robot? Its official name is HP RoboCop, and it patrols the park for the Huntington Park Police Department. It can't really stop crime, but it does tell people to keep the park clean. It's also supposed to be a direct link to the police, though in this case, it was a complete failure. How do you feel about robots patrolling our parks? Do you think real RoboCops are just around the corner, or do you despise the idea altogether? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. 5. The California Killer. Joseph James DeAngelo was a police officer in California back in the 70s and 80s. Other than being a cop, he was also a serial killer and a burglar. He killed at least 13 people, committed 120 burglaries, and sexually assaulted at least 50 women. And all between 1974 and 1986 in California. He was actually behind 3 devastating crime sprees, which at the time the press believed were committed by 3 different people. It wasn't until later that evidence revealed that all 3 crime sprees were committed by the same person. In San Joaquin Valley, he was known as the Visalia Ransacker. In the Sacramento area, people called him the East Area Rapist. But it would be the crimes he committed in Santa Barbara, Orange, and Ventura County that earned him the nickname Night Stalker. While all these women were being killed, the police were desperately trying to find out who was responsible. Joseph's position as a cop helped him to evade the authorities. It wasn't until 2001 that DNA testing linked all his crimes together. Then, in 2016, the FBI renewed a nationwide effort to capture the guy, even offering a $50,000 reward. It took just 2 years for them to track down DeAngelo and charge him with 8 counts of first-degree murder. At the time, he was already 72 and pretty much got away with a lifetime of killing. So what little life Joseph James DeAngelo has left is being whittled away in jail. He's currently 76 and will never see the light of day again. 4. 263 years. Daniel Holtzclaw has gotten 263 years in jail for a string of terrifying crimes that he committed over a period of about 6 months. If you haven't heard of Daniel Holtzclaw before, get ready to be sick. He was convicted on 18 out of 36 counts of first-degree rape, and these were only the counts that were brought up in court, and not even all of his crimes. Some of the names of his charges are actually too brutal to say out loud on the internet. Here's what this horrible cop did. He would select his victims based on their social status, criminal history, and record of prostitution. Daniel would cruise through the poorest neighborhoods of Oklahoma City in his police uniform, picking out African-American women that looked easy to prey on. Once he had his eyes set on the victim, he would then do the worst things imaginable to them. During the court proceedings, the testimonies of 13 victims were heard. It was enough for the jury to give Daniel 263 years in jail. Not only did he target women as young as 17, but he even targeted grandmothers around the age of 60. He went on a mad spree of terror, and thankfully enough women came forward with their stories to the police that he was eventually caught. 3. Killing the neighbor. A policewoman accidentally walked into her neighbor's house and shot him dead. It was a bizarre case, which resulted in Amber Geiger being sentenced to spend 10 years in jail. The incident happened back in 2018, when somehow Amber mistook her neighbor's apartment for her own. When she walked into the apartment following a 13-hour workday, she was terrified to find an African-American man sitting on the sofa and eating a bowl of ice cream. She was confused because the door had been unlocked. Exhausted after a long shift and not thinking properly, she assumed that she was being burglarized and that 26-year-old Botham Jean had broken into her house. She pulled out her gun and shot him until dead. During the court proceedings, prosecutors argued that Amber shot to kill instead of retreating out of the house, calling for backup, or doing anything a cop is supposed to do. She also didn't only go to the wrong apartment, she went to the completely wrong floor of the building. I know we've all been tired from work before, but it's hard to imagine being so exhausted that you go to the wrong floor of the building, to the wrong door, and then walk into the wrong apartment and shoot someone. For her gross negligence, accidental break-in, and quickness to kill, Amber was charged with murder, given 10 years in jail, but could be out on parole in 5. 2. Frisky with a minor. Shauna Bishop was once a deputy officer with the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office. But in 2019, Bishop found herself under arrest and having to register as a sex offender for getting busy with a kid. How old was the kid? He was only 16 at the time, while Shauna Bishop was 46 years old. That is a massive age discrepancy of 30 years. And to make matters even worse in this situation, the kid was the son of her ex-boyfriend. It wasn't enough to just have her ex, she also had to go after his son. The boy's father dated Shauna after he separated from his wife. His wife and Shauna also happened to be friends. When the father went to his ex-wife to say that he was uncomfortable with the way Shauna was behaving around their child, she simply shrugged it off. She even invited Shauna Bishop over to their house to have dinner and spend the night. But when the mother fell asleep, Shauna went up to the young boy's room and did stuff with him. She didn't get caught for 2 weeks until the boy told his sister what had happened, who then told her mother, who then told the police. This became a huge scandal for Bishop, who first went on administrative leave and then resigned from the force. In June of 2019, she was arrested and given 1 year jail time, 5 years probation, 180 hours community service, and is now a registered sex offender. 1. Beer and cigarettes. They do things a little differently in Arkansas. A police officer from Parkin was caught driving inmates to the local convenience store so that they could purchase beer and cigarettes. It was Officer Darrell Crowder who was guilty of this strange offense. He went to the Cross County Detention Center to pick up a pair of inmates and bring them to court. But instead of taking them to jail when their court proceedings were finished, he took them to a random house where one of the inmates went in and got some money. Then he drove both inmates to a gas station, let them go inside while they were still handcuffed so they could purchase huge amounts of alcohol and cigarettes. There's no debating what the officer did. Footage of the inmates in the store was saved on the gas station surveillance footage. Once the men got back in the police cruiser, they drove to the jail drinking beer, smoking cigarettes, and throwing their empty beer cans out of the window. It's hard to say what's worse, the blatant littering by the police officer or the fact that he helped smuggle tobacco and booze into a prison. These guys only got caught once the inmates were found with the tobacco during a routine search.
Number 10. Tana Mongeau's mugshot. YouTuber Tana Mongeau was arrested at Coachella in 2017 for holding a vodka Red Bull. She was arrested because at the time, she was only 18 years old and wasn't legally allowed to be drinking alcohol. 4 undercover police officers patrolling Coachella took her away in handcuffs during the festival's second week in LA. She was detained, given a ticket, and made an example of. And all for nothing except holding a can of vodka Red Bull, which she claimed she never even drank out of. She has kept her story straight all these years, saying she was totally sober when they arrested her. It didn't end up being a big deal for the YouTube star, who was charged with possession of alcohol and consumption of alcohol. The cops took her fingerprints, then let her go. The second she was free, Tana returned to the music festival like nothing happened. After the whole thing blew over, she decided to turn her arrest into profit. She started selling t-shirts with her mugshot on them for a small price of $28 each. Number 9. The tragic plane crash of Josh Newman. Josh Newman was a popular American skateboarder and influencer on social media. He had a YouTube channel in which he uploaded videos of all his amazing adventures around the world. When he was only 12 years old, Josh started filming himself longboarding in scenic locations. He built up 1.2 million subscribers on YouTube through the years. As he grew older, he went to more and more exotic places. He was reported to have the most popular skateboarding videos on the platform. Just a single video of Josh longboarding throughout the tunnels of France was shared over 1.6 million times. But Josh and his innocence are no more. The adventurer, entrepreneur, and much-loved internet celebrity died in a fiery plane crash in Iceland. According to the Associated Press, Josh was on a sightseeing flight to create commercial content for a Belgian brand of streetwear called Suspicious Antwerp. He was flying with 3 other people who also tragically died in the crash. One was an employee for the brand. The other was the Iceland pilot flying the plane. The other 2 were content creators like Josh. They were flying in a small Cessna 172. It vanished on February 4th, 2022. There was no distress signal sent out. It just disappeared off the radar. After a few days of searching, responders finally found the aircraft near Lake Thingvallavatn, but there were no bodies in it. Local authorities had to send autonomous submarines into the lake, at which point they found the corpses 157 feet beneath the water. Number 8. Insulting a drug lord. Mexican YouTube star Juan Luis Laguna Rosales was shot to death the week before Christmas 2017. He was killed for the crime of insulting a notorious Mexican drug lord. Juan was only 17 years old when he was murdered. He was originally from the Mexican state of Sinaloa. The teen dropped out of high school when he was 15. He made a living by washing cars, and then he started to get a little popular on the internet. Mexicans called him El Pirata de Culiacan, which means the pirate of the Culiacan. What made Juan so famous was his hardcore partying lifestyle. Most of his YouTube videos were of him chugging beer and getting as drunk as he possibly could. When he finally did turn 17, he already had hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram, and he had more than 1 million on Facebook. Juan was featured in music videos, he got himself tattoos, and he even drew a beard on his face. But what could have been a very successful and long career ended tragically when Juan made fun of the wrong guy. He posted a video insulting El Mencho, real name Nemesio Asaguera Cervantes. According to the US government, El Mencho is one of the worst drug kingpins south of the border. I can't say out loud what Juan told the kingpin to do in his video, but it was pretty nasty. Nobody knows why Juan singled him out, but shortly after the video went viral, Juan was ambushed by a squad of young gangsters while at a bar in Jalisco. The social media star was shot somewhere between 15 and 18 times. Number 7. Pranking the police. South Florida YouTuber King Sid, real name Jason Sid, was arrested in Coral Springs for a prank video gone terribly wrong. According to the police, Jason made a 911 call on January 27, 2022, complaining about a suspicious person at a gas station. But there was no suspicious person. It was all for a prank video titled "Coke Prank on Aggressive Cops." The gag went like this. When the police arrived, Jason and his friends told them that they had something in the trunk. When the cops asked what, they said there was Coke in the car. And then when the officers opened the trunk and looked inside, there was nothing but cans of Coca-Cola. Some people may have thought this was funny, but the police definitely didn't. Officials say that the fake call resulted in 4 officers wasting 45 minutes of their time, delaying their response to 7 real emergencies. Jason was charged with making a fraudulent 911 call, but no other action has been taken by the authorities. Do you think this was a worthwhile prank? Or should Jason get in serious trouble for wasting police time and endangering other people? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to hit subscribe before the end of the video. Number 6. Sneaking into Area 51. A Dutch YouTube star and his friend got a little too close to Area 51 on September 10, 2019. According to what the pair told their fans, they were just trying to get a good up-close look at the mysterious military site before they left the US. Instead of getting a glimpse at the secretive facility, they wound up in a Nevada jail. Thijs Granzier, 20 years old, and Govert Sweep, 21, only managed to get 3 miles deep into what some might call the most mysterious national security site in all of America. This is according to the Nye County Sheriff's Office. They may have gotten away with the excuse of being ignorant tourists, if not for one simple fact. It was the day before the planned storming of Area 51. The pair had snuck up early before anyone else to see if they could get a private sneak peek. Well, they couldn't. Now, if you think that sneaking into Area 51 isn't a big deal, just listen to how much trouble these guys got in. They pleaded guilty to trespassing and illegal parking and were sentenced to spend a year in jail. However, they managed to wiggle their way out of it by getting the sentence suspended and spending only 3 days in jail. But they also had to pay a fine of $2,280 each and give up all electronic equipment found in their vehicle. This included their phones, computers, and cameras. Was it worth it? Number 5. Off the mountainside. YouTuber Albert Derlin fell to his death while filming a video in the Italian Alps on July 28, 2021. Albert, originally from Denmark, was popular on social media for sharing music videos, comedy sketches, and episodes of his adventures out in the wild. But this was one adventure that proved fatal. According to USA Today, Albert was recording a video on his phone on Mount Cesena when he lost his footing and tumbled 600 feet to the rocks below. The fall likely killed him instantly, but if not, he was dead by the time the rescue team was able to find his body using a search and rescue helicopter. This was a tragic case, but we don't know exactly what happened in the final moments before his death. We don't know if he was walking dangerously close to the edge and looking at his phone instead of where he was going. Either way, it wasn't his fault, but was undoubtedly an honest mistake. Albert was just 22 years old and trying to make some content for his 170,000 YouTube subscribers and over 200,000 Instagram followers. Number 4. Tragedy 5 days later. Tor Ekhoff was also known by his YouTube name, Apator. On November 22, 2021, he uploaded a rather unusual video. It was titled, "I am not dead, I am 57 today." He had the number 57 written on his forehead. Tor filmed himself drinking a few shots of vodka before kissing a tree and putting a plastic bag over his head. It was a way for him to celebrate his birthday with his 1.2 million subscribers. But in a tragic twist of irony, Tor was dead 5 days later. He fell through the ice at Jacob's Dam near Kongsberg in Norway and died while attempting to ice skate. According to the Norwegian police, a witness heard his cries for help and called for assistance, but even though Tor was rushed to the hospital with all haste, he was dead the next day, the 27th of November. Less than a week after his 57th birthday and the great proclamation he made of being alive, the YouTube personality was no more. Number 3. A case of animal cruelty. A YouTuber in Delhi tied a bunch of helium balloons to a dog to see if it would fly. This terrible and tragic case of animal cruelty happened on May of 2021 and saw the YouTuber arrested. The accused is Gaurav Sharma, 32 years old. He took his own dog, an adorable Pomeranian, and tied a bundle of helium balloons to it. He then let go of the dog and watched as it started rising up the wall of a nearby apartment building. Luckily, the dog only made it to the second floor and didn't continue past the roof and way up into the sky. Nonetheless, the video received massive criticism from many of Sharma's 4.15 million YouTube subscribers. Sharma quickly removed the clip after the uproar, but it was too late. Officials with People for Animals had already filed a complaint at the police station in India, and the wheels were in motion. Sadly, people just don't get in that much trouble for putting animals in danger. The YouTuber was arrested and released later on that evening. He's also still filthy rich and makes more videos. The only thing we can hope for is that he's learned his lesson to leave animals out of them. Number 2. Ambushing a jogger. YouTuber Vitaly Zadorovetsky was arrested in April of 2020 for assaulting a jogger. At the time, Vitaly was 28 years old and had over 28 million subscribers from his YouTube channel. but on Miami Beach on a Sunday evening, he ambushed a female jogger. He jumped her from out of nowhere, knocked the woman to the ground, and then punched her in the face repeatedly. This was no prank, but a very real assault. A report from the Miami Beach Police Department says that after the attack, Vitalia retreated to his house nearby to hide. When he first assaulted the victim, she screamed loudly enough that several residents heard what was happening and began to intervene. He ran away to avoid trouble. The victim now says the only reason she wasn't beaten up even worse is because of the screaming that may have just saved her life. But now comes the confusing part. Why would such a hugely famous and popular YouTube star attack a random woman on the beach? She had just been going for a leisurely jog and had never even met Vitalia before. While not totally confirmed, it's believed he was on mushrooms at the time and he was wigging out. In other words, the drugs made him do it. But whether he was on drugs or just completely nuts, his career is basically over. He went on a hiatus for a year without uploading a video. Then when he did finally start uploading again, his videos received way fewer views than he did in the past. It looks like beating up random joggers isn't very good for your career. And number 1, confronting Google gone wrong. Kyle Long was angry that his YouTube channel was shut down. He wasn't overly popular, but did make quite a few videos surrounding conspiracies. When YouTube decided to crack down on misinformation, a lot of these conspiracy channels bit the dust. Kyle's was one of them. Furious that he had been silenced, he decided to confront Google over his being kicked off the YouTube platform. It didn't go that well for Kyle. He decided to drive from his home in Maine to the Google office in Mountain View. This was in March of 2019. But it was as he was passing through Iowa that his plans spiraled out of control. He got into a minor car accident and for some weird reason vandalized a gas station bathroom. He wasn't in any trouble, but did have to talk to the Iowa State Patrol. While they were talking, he revealed his plans to confront Google, as if Google is a human person. The Iowa State Patrol were a bit suspicious, so they called ahead to the Mountain View Police Department. They gave the details of Kyle's car and said he might be planning to attack the employees at Google. Mountain View officers quickly picked him up when he entered the area. They got him on the exit leading to Google's headquarters. When they searched his car, they found several baseball bats. He was charged with making threats to harm employees and hauled off to the Santa Clara County Jail.
10. Maya Millette. Maya Millette was last seen on the night of January 7th in her home in Chula Vista. 9 months after she disappeared, her husband Larry was arrested for her murder. However, during his court hearing, he entered a plea of not guilty in the first-degree murder of his wife. Whether he truly killed Maya or not has yet to be proven by the court. It all started when Maya wanted a divorce in 2020. She had a meeting scheduled with a divorce lawyer right before she suddenly vanished. Friends described the couple's marriage as toxic. District Attorney Summer Stefan, who's working to get Larry locked behind bars, also said he was kind of crazy. He once contacted a spellcaster, a person claiming to have magical abilities, to force Maya into staying in the relationship. Larry asked the magician to make Maya have an accident, preferably with broken bones involved. That way, she would have to stay home with him. This is the kind of person Larry was. Maya sent a message to her family on the night of the 7th, 4 hours before her phone activity stopped at around 1 o'clock in the morning. At the same time, Larry could be seen on surveillance footage backing up the family car to a blind spot on the camera. Larry then left his home the next day at around 6:45 in the morning, but didn't bring his phone or his 2 older children. He only brought their 4-year-old. He was gone for 11 hours and 21 minutes. When the police asked where he went, he claimed they were at Solana Beach. It was actually pretty sneaky on Larry's part. The cops had no way to track him and no way to confirm he was or wasn't at the beach. Still, they're almost positive he was spending those 11 hours getting rid of his wife's body. They just can't prove it yet. 9. Thomas Howe. On January 22, 2022, Thomas Howe from Chicago crashed his vehicle on Interstate 94. Other than that, nobody is entirely sure what happened to him. He was driving to his family's home in Antioch when he smashed into another vehicle near mile marker 16. This is according to the Antioch Police Department. A witness saw Thomas walk away from the scene of the accident, allegedly heading in the direction of the Old School Forest Preserve. This was the last confirmed sighting of Thomas. Nobody's seen him since, with the only clue he left behind being his cell phone about a quarter mile into the forest preserve, ditched in the dirt. There is currently a reward of $10,000 for anyone who can give the police information that directly leads to Thomas's discovery. His parents are pleading for help, and investigators have so far sifted through over 2,000 tips from across the country. One of the tips was from someone who claimed to see Thomas in Las Vegas, but this was never confirmed. What's really awful is that none of this even makes sense. Thomas was on his way to see his family. He was extremely close with them and wouldn't have just left his parents wondering what happened. And then there's the deal with the phone. Why would he ditch his phone after walking into the woods, even if he was rattled from the accident? He wasn't in any trouble, he hadn't done anything wrong, yet he seemingly fled into the forest and disappeared. Not even the police canine units were able to get his scent. 8. Jake CEFOLIA. Jake CEFOLIA went missing at the beginning of August 2021. In the years prior to his disappearance, he was living the lifestyle everybody dreamed of. He traveled around the world as a top executive at United Airlines. He was the senior vice president of worldwide sales. In other words, Jake was filthy rich. He spent a lot of his time living the extreme bachelor life in places like Hong Kong, London, and Singapore. According to police reports, their investigation also showed that he was a serial dater. He was meeting girls on Bumble in Chicago, San Francisco, California, and Honolulu. But here's where things get strange. The very last purchase he made on his credit card was at a gas station in Illinois, not far from his house in Elmhurst. A video from the gas station showed him wearing hiking boots, cargo shorts, and a baseball cap. His car was seen on a traffic camera at 9:30 that morning, and then he vanished. The day before, the Elmhurst police had showed up at his house with a search warrant to collect evidence, but the police have declined to say what they were investigating, and Jake was never charged with a crime. He seems to have run away, but it's been over a year and he hasn't resurfaced yet. The police did find his car. It was parked in the DuPage County Forest Preserve. Officers used bloodhounds to track his scent, but lost him 20 yards into the woods. Nobody has any idea where he went. 7. TATUM MORELL. Last summer, TATUM MORELL walked into the Montana mountains by herself and never came out. At 23 years old, she was determined to climb all 5 mountain peaks solo and return after 5 days. However, after stopping briefly at the Red Lodge to prepare for her journey, she vanished. She made her final contact with her family on July 1st at the lodge, but after 5 days had gone by and her family never heard from her again, they feared the worst. Now, after a desperate search attempt, no trace of her has been found, and she's been assumed dead. Canine units, fire rescue, helicopters, everyone was out searching. They looked across mountain peaks, lakes, and anywhere the West Fork trailhead may have taken TATUM MORELL. They never found her. Sadly, they had to give up the search. As terrible as it is, they can't put all their resources into combing every last inch of the Montana wilderness. It's just not possible. Some of these peaks are 12,000 feet tall, with dense forest going on for hundreds of miles. She could be anywhere, or she could be nowhere. The only solace Tatum's family has is how she perished. If she did indeed die, she died doing something she loved, exploring the great outdoors. 6. Nomi Bolivar. Noemi Bolivar might still be alive. At least that's what the private investigator looking for her has told news sources. She's been missing for over a year, but there's still hope. On February 11, 2021, Noemi initiated a conversation with 3 of her friends through text messages and then ghosted them. She started the conversations, made no reply, and then shut her phone off. As a member of the Mormon community in Hollywood, this was a pretty big shock for her family and friends. They almost immediately assumed the worst, but Joe Carrillo says there may be nothing wrong. Joe was hired independently of the police to track Noemi down. Through his investigation, he learned the young girl was struggling with her faith. She no longer believed in what her fellow Mormons believed in and was looking to abandon the church. He believes she may have simply cut ties with everyone she knew, got on a bus, and vanished. Nonetheless, Joe is still searching. He won't rest until he finds proof of life, or in the worst case, proof of death. Noemi was last seen getting on a bus on Sheridan Street, then going to the Ann Kolb Nature Center. After that, her trail is cold as ice. Do you think Noemi just ran away, or do you suspect something more sinister? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't already. 5. Shailene Bell. Shailene Keeler Bell was missing for 4 months before her body was finally discovered in June of 2021. She went missing from the Canadian city of Chilliwack, near Vancouver. At only 23 years old, Shailene was a fairly normal woman. She had her own apartment in the city, she had 2 young kids, and she was well liked by her friends. But on January 30th, she was last seen exiting her apartment with an unknown destination. 2 days later, her Hyundai Tucson was found completely abandoned. 4 months after that, the police found her corpse in the Fraser River near Coquitlam, also near Vancouver. Nobody knows how she got there or what happened in the 120 days between. According to what the Chilliwack Royal Canadian Mounted Police have said, their investigation is over. They found nothing to suggest criminal involvement. However, the British Columbia Coroner's Office is now conducting their own investigation to see how she died and when. Even though the police say there's nothing here to see, that doesn't mean there wasn't foul play. They could be lying. The thing is that Shailene's body was found just after 2 other women were discovered dead in the Hope area. 2 other women who had gone missing without a trace. And on May 26th, a former missing woman was discovered dead on the side of a highway near the town of Hope. That's 4 dead women in as many years, all near Vancouver. And yet the police are saying there's nothing to worry about. 4. Anne-Marie CUSUMANO. Anne-Marie CUSUMANO ceased all contact with her family on Long Island on December 17, 2021. Police in Brooklyn saw her 10 days later at a hotel. But after she left the hotel, she vanished into obscurity and hasn't been seen since. The reason the police knew she was at the hotel is because they had gotten a disturbance call. Anne-Marie was there with another woman and a man, all of whom were arguing. She left the hotel, also leaving behind personal belongings like her identification. At the same time, her estranged husband was being arrested in Queens for beating and robbing Anne-Marie. About 1 hour before all this was happening, her parents officially reported her missing to the police because they hadn't spoken to her in 10 days. She was roughly 10 weeks pregnant. It's been a month now and there's still no sign of her. We don't know if she's hiding on purpose or if she's even still in New York City. 3. Christopher WOITEL. Christopher WOITEL is the man who walked into his home and never walked out again. It happened on January 8, 2022. Christopher was caught by the security camera outside his apartment building walking into his residence. That same security camera never caught him walking out. He contacted his mother on January 9th, the day after he was seen in his house. But 4 days later, on January 13th, she reported him missing because she hadn't heard from him. Naturally, the police went to Christopher's apartment and searched it, but they didn't find anything. Nothing out of place or disturbed. The only way he could have gotten out was through the back door, but the camera didn't catch him leaving. He somehow pulled a Houdini and disappeared into thin air. It's been over a month now and he still hasn't been found. The case gets even stranger still, or maybe I should say scarier. According to Christopher's sister, he was an extremely generous man. He often extended his home to people in need of a place to sleep. This sometimes meant people living on the streets, but as of yet, police haven't been able to find any vagrants who could have been capable of vanishing a man out of his house. Plus, there was no sign of a struggle in the apartment and no blood. It's totally baffling, and neither the private investigator hired by the family nor the police have been able to make any headway. 2. Kevin Winters. Kevin Winters went to a First Hawaiian Bank ATM in Kahana on September 3, 2021. It was 6:45 in the morning and he deposited a check from his mother. After that, nobody has any idea what happened to him. Kevin moved to Maui from Michigan in 2007 out of the blue. He had nothing but a single bag and dreams of living in paradise. He fell in love with the island, got a job, and lived at a hostel in downtown Wailuku. He was single, he had no family near him, but he made regular calls to his mother almost every single day. On September 2nd, those calls ended. Things had taken a turn for Kevin just before his vanishing. According to his colleagues at the North Shore Hostel, where he traded labor for a free room, he had turned into a bit of a thief. He had to move out on September 1st after he got caught stealing somebody's cell phone. It was insanely out of character, especially since Kevin had worked there for 13 years. His colleagues said they had seen him rummage through the fridge before and take other people's food, but never something like a cell phone. And it also didn't make sense because Kevin wasn't totally broke. He still had a fair chunk of change in his bank account. He had no logical reason for taking somebody's phone. It's a weird story with no ending. Whatever happened to Kevin when he walked away from that ATM in September, we still don't know. 1. Mary Johnson. Mary Johnson and her husband packed up their stuff and abruptly moved out of Mary's sister's house. They went to the town of Marysville in Washington. Mary didn't speak with her family very often, and she didn't really reply to text messages from her sister. You might say she and her husband were a couple of loners. But one day, Mary's husband reached out to her sister to say that he hadn't seen Mary in weeks. The last time he saw her was in November of 2020, 30 days before Christmas. She was last seen walking down a road in western Washington, apparently to visit some friends in a nearby town, but she never showed up. Just over 1 year later, Mary is still missing. All we know about the case is that she and her husband had been having trouble. She had been mostly staying with a small group of friends, only returning to her house sometimes to shower and pick up her mail. When she set out walking, it was because the individual who was supposed to give her a ride never showed up. But sometime during that walk, somebody did give her a ride. The police saw that her cell phone connected to a different tower too far away for her to have reached by foot. But they don't know exactly where or how. Right now, it's pretty clear she got into somebody's vehicle she really shouldn't have. But because no body has been found, the police haven't been able to launch a murder investigation. Do you have any theories for these tragic missing person cases? Let us know in the comments below and be sure to hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching and come back soon for more shocking crime videos. Bye.